We're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to our Beaumont City Council meeting for Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 here at 6 p.m. in City Hall. I'll call meeting to order. We begin with our land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. This evening, we have two councillors who are joining us remotely. Councillor Muckoff Swain and Councillor Nathan Helibus are both online now. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Loud and clear.
Thank you.
Yep, same here.
Thank you. We will move on to our agenda, a drop to the agenda. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda this evening?
No, Mr. Mayor, the agenda may be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Member Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as circulated? Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that the December 12th, 2023 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Council, would you please vote? I will take the votes of Councillor Muckoff Swain verbally. Sam, how do you vote?
In favor.
Councillor Telebus. Nathan, how do you vote?
In favor as well.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Moving on our agenda, we have open forum. Madam Clerk, do we have an open forum this evening? Oh, hang on. Your mic is, now it's on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have Mr. Brian Moon with us to present to council.
Okay.
He had some materials which were circulated electronically. So our councillors joining by Zoom should have received those, and hard copies are also available at council's desk.
Thank you. Mr. Moon, would you please join us at the table? And you have about 5 minutes to speak. And please have the microphone right in front of you and speak right into it if you could. It's very sensitive, not directional, Council. No one's caught that little word I didn't use, not directional. You got 5 minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute signal. So when you're all done, give you a chance to have an idea. Council may or may not ask questions of you after the proposal is over, okay?
Fine.
Begin when you're ready, sir.
Yeah, ready to.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Moon. I'm before you to ask the council to direct the city's CAO or the infrastructure department to assign a qualified person to meet with me to understand and assess my complaint found in the lot drainage bylaw as given, and give me answers to them. What I want is that my property will not supply drainage for my neighbor's property, and this is why. I have been a resident of Beaumont since 1975. At that time, I obtained a general contractor's license, a development and building permit with associated site plan, an Alberta Land Surveyor's certificate of my property. These were offered to the city because I was informed they have no real property reports before 1977. But this was ignored. There have been no changes to my property grading since 1976. I have a lot drainage problem that originates on my neighbor's property. In February, I registered a complaint with bylaw enforcement. All the problems I am experiencing are described in bylaw 732-08 and its amendment. In 1976, my lot drained itself from back to front on both side boundaries. This is the same for all lots on the 46th Street cul-de-sac, which reflected by my original site plan. No lot was ever designed to drain onto an adjacent property. All of my drainage problems have developed because of changes made to the east neighboring property by several different owners over years. My lot now drains itself and 25 to 30% of my neighbor's lot. This overloads my east boundary drainage, causing some flooding in heavy storms, rainstorms, and ice damming during winter thaws. I noted that section 40 of the lot drainage bylaw covers infractions that existed prior to its inception in 2008 and exist today. Retrospectivity, section 40 states, this bylaw shall apply to all lots in the town, including those lots where there exists an infraction or of any section of parts 3, 4, and 5 of this bylaw that was created or occurred prior to the date this bylaw comes into force. Okay, please see the two documents I've supplied. The first lists my complaints covered by the bylaw that adversely affect my property. The second I received on August 31st from Raman Singh of the lot grading department. Note the only point that was covered from the list of my complaints was point number 3. The email, I emailed Mr. Singh with this question: what was his assessment of the remaining points? The response was an auto reply email, what I considered to be a brush off response. Looking at the second paragraph of Mr. Singh's letter, which refers to point 3 of my complaint, the portion of my swale that is, the portion of the swale that is mine is not obstructing water flow, but is being overloaded by illegal runoff from my neighbor's property. There is no portion of my east boundary that causes flooding or drains onto my neighbor's property. As a ratepayer of the city, I deserve answers to my complaints and the right to the protection this bylaw gives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. I appreciate that. You began your presentation with a request for council to direct administration to meet with you. That's not the role of council, I'm afraid. I can't direct council, cannot direct administration to meet with a resident. You've already met, Mr. Strick's already met with you on several occasions, my understanding, for you to speak with your neighbors. So my understanding, Madam Clerk, that the bylaw in question our guest is referring to is coming back to council in 2024 for a review.
Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. The surface drainage bylaw is scheduled to be reviewed in 2024. So as part of a review, we do a legal review of the bylaw. We do a jurisdictional scan to see similar bylaws in the regional municipalities. And we also look at any documented issues that administration has collected. So we would keep Mr. Moon's notes on the bylaw on file for that review.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of council for our presenter this evening? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much. First of all, Mr. Moore, thank you for coming in. I know it's not an easy thing to do to come before council, but my question is really to the administration. I'm just wondering if we still have access to the mediation services that were available in years past, and whether that information could be or has been passed on to the residents.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Barnhart. Yes, we do have those services still available. I believe they were shared with Mr. Moon, but he can confirm that.
Yes, can I speak?
Briefly,
Yes, actually, because of the failure of the city to enforce the bylaws that I've listed here, the sections of the drainage bylaw, my neighbor and I, our relationship once was good and has totally evaporated. We both been offered mediation 3 times by the RCMP, twice by bylaw enforcement officers, and I've asked him himself to take part in it, and he flatly refuses. So I have no choice in this.
okay, appreciate that.
But the problems I'm facing here, if the bylaw was enforced, I'd expect someone to come and talk to me about this, but if the bylaw was enforced under what I've stated here, there would be no drainage problem for me. It would be fine. But the thing is it's not being enforced, and I have no choice. I can't even sue him, because if you go before a judge for a civil suit on things that are covered by the bylaw and the city refuses to enforce the bylaw, what chance is there?
Okay, well, I appreciate your perspective and your frustration. At the same time, the August 31st letter clearly outlines the situation for both homeowners to come to an agreement together. It's not a city council issue, and I regret to tell you that, but we're not going to direct administration to do something that they're already doing, which is meeting with you and sending letters to you and the other neighbors. So I encourage you to work with our city people, Mr. Singh and your neighbor, and try and have some kind of resolution. But it's not something the city council can address for you.
Will you direct this to courts to be able to talk to me about this?
No,
Because
we're not able to direct council. Council not direct administration in these kind of issues. This is a neighbor issue. Administration already dealing with both parties already. Council will not be getting involved with a dispute between neighbors. Sorry to give you that information, but that's unfortunate, the situation at hand. Are there any further questions from members of council for our presenter? Before I move on with our meeting? Sorry, Mr. Moon, that's the best I can do for you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate your coming in. Next on our agenda, council, is our consent agenda. Madam Clerk, can you put the consent agenda on the screen, please? The member of council willing to move the consent agenda as presented. Oh, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to read the consent items?
Sure.
As per usual. Okay, so we have several items on the consent agenda. Item 5.1, regular council meeting minutes from November 28th. So that's the adoption of those minutes. Item 5.2, the budget council meeting minutes from November 29th and continuing to December 1st. And the recommendation there is that council adopt those minutes. The item 6.4, 2023 Protective Services third quarter report. And the motion there is that the report be received for information. Item 6.5, parking permit program in residential areas. The recommendation there is that the report be received for information. Then we have item 7.2, which is fees and charges. And this is all three readings of that bylaw, which was discussed at the council budget deliberations. So that would be all three readings. And then finally, item 11.1, land management policy annual reporting. And the motion there is that the report be received for information and remain private pursuant to VoIP sections 21 and 24.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. Member of council willing to move the agenda consent agenda as presented or amend the consent agenda. Councilor McCook, you have the floor. Kat.
Thank you. I'd like to pull off number 6.5, the parking permit program.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk. Oh, that was fast. I didn't even see it there yet. Appreciate that. Any further questions or concerns on the consent agenda as amended? Seeing none from our fellow councilors remotely. Okay, Council, I'll ask you to vote. Sorry, a motion to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended. Councilor Barnhart, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda as presented be adopted.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote. Councilor Monkhoff-Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Councilor Talbot, how do you vote?
Also in favor.
Thank you. Carries unanimously on the amended consent agenda. Thank you. Moving on to our agenda. Moving into item 6.1, which is the 2024 municipal operating budget, utility budget, and capital budget. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you'll be presenting to us momentarily here, and then we'll move into questions from council and clarifying, and then any comments or questions from council. Curtis, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeBlanco. I'm the director of finance for the city. Before council are 4 recommended motions seeking approval for the municipal operating, municipal capital, utility operating, and utility capital budgets. Municipal governments within the province of Alberta are required to adopt an annual operating and capital budgets by December 31st. Administration presented a proposed budget to council on November 14th. Subsequent to that, council conducted 3 evening budget meetings and approved motions to amend this proposed budget. Administration has incorporated these changes in the updated budget document included as attachment 1, which reflects these updates. Administration will return in April of 2024 with an update to budget estimates when the province has finalized their education requisition portion of the property tax, as well as to finalize the assessment growth numbers. The update to the budget will be presented to council prior to the approval of the property tax bylaw, which establishes both the residential and non-residential tax rates for the year. Once the budget has been updated and the property tax bylaw approved, property tax notice can then be distributed to property owners by the end of May, and property taxes will be due by the end of June. If approved by City Council, the 2024 municipal operating budget would result in a 6.45 tax increase. For the average residential taxpayer, with a property valued at $447,000, this would result in a 196 increase to their annual municipal property tax bill. The utility operating budget would result in an increase to the typical homeowner's utility bill of approximately $179 per year. And also, if approved by City Council, the 2024 capital budgets may result in future impacts on the operating budget. Administration will try to manage this impact on the operating budget as best it can without an increase to property taxes, but if required, may result in a property tax increase for the 2025 municipal operating budget. With that, I'll turn it back over to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. Appreciate that. And members of the audience and people listening at home, council did a 3-day workshop last week and went through the budget in its entirety, and the budget you see before you now is a result of that workshop. At this point, I will ask members of council to ask any clarifying questions they have of Mr. DeBlanco on the budget that was circulated as part of this agenda. After that, I'll entertain any comments or comments or observations any members of council have on the budget. Then we'll move into the 4 motions that are required to approve or disapprove the budget in our process. So with that, open the floor to any clarifying questions members of council may wish to ask at this time. Seeing none from inside the room, I'll go to Sam first. Any clarifying questions, Sam, from you?
None for me.
Thank you. Councillor Telebas, any questions, any clarifying questions from yourself?
No, none for me.
Thank you. At this time, council, I'll open up the floor to any questions, any comments or concerns or observations council members may want to make about the budget before I go into the motion phase of the budget approval process. Anybody wish to make any comments at this time?
Yes, please.
Nathan? Councillor
Okay,
Telebas?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I think I just want to highlight a couple of things. One thing I want to start with is anyone who had watched the budget had seen that I was very cautious in spending. Given the hard economic times that everyone or majority of people are suffering and facing, it's difficult, in my opinion, to be putting forward excess spending during times like these. Albeit, I did vote against the majority of the capital spending, as well as some of the operating budgets. But I do respect the process that is followed. There was a lot of effort put in by all council members, city staff, the mayor as well in doing this budget process. So although I don't necessarily support the amount of funds that we are allocating to some of the things that have been put forward, I do support the process. So I guess just foresight into my vote. I'm voting for the process. I'm voting on behalf of other council members and respecting their opinion and the process that was followed. But again, I will do my best and continue to do my best to find some efficiencies and cost savings so that we don't see significant tax levy increases like we're seeing this year.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate your comments. Next, I have Councillor Barnard, followed by Councillor McCook. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This year's municipal budget was challenging as always. I participated in, as you know, 11 others. So this is now the 12th City of Beaumont budget that I've had input to and opportunity to connect and comment upon and decide whether I would support it. every year has had its challenges and some years more than others. Growth has always played a major role in the Beaumont's budgets, while we've seen our community grow exponentially. This year stands out, though. It stands out because of the impact felt by inflation on our essential services, things like water, fire, and policing. All of our city services are impacted by the increased costs for supplies, fuel, and labor. We need to maintain core services, and quality and accessible services need to be provided to our residents. I'm most excited that we have not given up on regional collaboration, and in particular, regional transit. While I'm deeply disappointed that we had to back up to go forward, I'm very glad that we will have daily service to Mill Woods, and where residents of Beaumont can connect to transit for school, work, shopping, and entertainment. So is the budget perfect? Absolutely not, but it does three important things in my mind. One, it maintains essential services, policing, water, and fire. It keeps recreation and social services, including childcare, available and accessible. And three, it continues to move Beaumont forward as an innovative, vibrant place to live, work, play, and shop. Just want to say in closing that I thank my colleagues here for their time and extreme effort it takes both to read and to comment and to speak out loud what we believe. So I think we've done a very good job, and I appreciate the mayor's leadership as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that on a personal level as well as your overall comments. Thank you very much. Councillor Cook, followed by Councillor Penrod. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. I don't have too much, as some of it has already been said by my colleagues, but I do want to say that this was definitely a difficult budget. One of the main things that I'd like to highlight is provincial infrastructure funding has seen a decrease from 2011 to 2023 in funding per Albertan by $270. That's certainly significant and is impacting municipalities' ability to build and fix infrastructure. The increase we're seeing this year is significant compared to other years, but I think it's prudent that we do keep the ball rolling and maintain our services, as Councillor Barnhart said. A portion of this is inflation, a portion of it is RCMP federal agreement that we did not have control over, but was needed. And we added additional funding for library, which is very much needed as nearly half of our community holds memberships. We have better transit options and a much needed procurement position, which will help us get better pricing and more accurate pricing for projects, which helps the community as a whole down the road. It was challenging, and raising taxes is never something that people like to see, but I think to keep our city operating at the level it is, we must continue to put in these much needed investments. If you've paid attention to other communities, due to a lack of investment, they are seeing very large increases due to many, many years of no increases. Therefore, I think it's prudent for us to do these incremental increases rather than push things down the road and leave even more difficult decisions for councils later. I just want to say thank you to all my council members, and especially to the new council members who were certainly thrown into it. And it's not an easy process to get thrown into. And this one was an especially difficult year. So they did well, and we had a lot of great questions and a lot of great discussions surrounding everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate your comments as well. Councillor Penrod. Phil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniel. Well, I won't take time to repeat what my colleagues have said, though I certainly agree with your statements. Just like to draw folks' attention to page 14 on the approved budget document. And it might seem kind of funny that we spent the better part of 3 days wrangling the total increase down from 6.5 to 6.45. But I think you'll see that under impact of council and other entities, these are the things that we were fighting for, and they've been already mentioned by my colleagues. But as I'm out in the community, I often am impressed by the fact that people are a little less focused on the absolute price that they're paying in tax and more focused on the return on investment that they're receiving for taxes. That's part of what makes Beaumont the type of community that attracted my family and continues to attract other families. It's a place where people are willing to work together to build something in common. And I think this budget reflects our mutual investment in one another. And I think that coming out of this budget, Beaumont is going to be a little safer and a little bit more inclusive. And that's the kind of work that we want to continue together. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilor Markov Swain, do you wish to say, have any comments?
No, I'm good, thanks. I think many great comments already been said, so I enjoyed the process. Appreciate all the work that council administration put in, and I'll leave it at that. Looking forward to voting.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll have a couple of brief comments then. Again, echo the comments of our previous councillors. A difficult process. It's the most important document we do every year, budget supply. Oh, Steve, you want to make a comment before I wrap up? Steve, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. Somehow my mic turned itself off there. Yeah, for me, I'm not gonna hash over a bunch of the comments other councillors made, but I do have a few points, and one of them is one of the things that we can count on, and that is the cost of labor isn't going down, and the cost of goods doesn't seem to be either. So, you know, I mentioned that at budget, and I just want to reiterate that now. And as administration stated in the opening comments, is that capital items will have operational impacts in the future. And I think that's something we also can't lose sight of. We need to take care of what we have in our community with our current service levels, and that cost doesn't go down. And we need to understand that new items that are added into the community contribute to future operational costs. So just very important to have that perspective. And one of the things that administration included in the budget this year, in some sections, is the capital cost, but then an estimated annual operational impact as well. And I think that was a helpful bit of information to guide our decision making. One of the more frustrating topics council has navigated this year has been surrounding project cost estimates and procurements. And as Councillor McCook stated, you know, this budget added support in the form of a full-time position for that, and that's important. So 6.5 to 6.45, like Councillor Penrod said, a lot of hours to do that, but there was a bunch of changes that happened in that as well. So I'm happy to report that this is council's budget. We poured hours and hours into this budget. So overall, I see this budget as an investment in the community and a commitment to our future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said also. I'll continue on my comments then. So part of the budget process that we tear apart the budget in the workshop and we vote on items as we go along. Not every councillor gives every item in the budget. That doesn't know how it works. We have our debate in our workshop. We had some very spirited debate, and we had some very frank discussions on where the budget should be going. We got it down to a lower number, then we added back in transit, which I'm very happy with. We'll have a bona fide transit system starting April 1st. It's going to run from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays every 40 minutes. It means you can get downtown, do your job, come home, see your family. You can live at home as a student and go to school. Well, the weekend service as well. We're going to have an actual bona fide transit system, which is part of this program. Of our 6.5% increase, 2.6 was for the RCMP. And that's a good thing. We have 2 more officers coming on board a year faster than we thought they would. That's a great thing. The retroactive contract wasn't great, but we had to eat that part of the cost. So of the 6.5, 2.6 was for protective services, which we're all happy to have. So I'm very happy with the budget process. As I mentioned before, we had very good debate on the topic. We landed, I think, at a number that increases services to our residents. And it provides new services and doesn't take anything away from our residents in terms of service deliveries, which is a very key thing. So we also appreciate our employees. So having said that, I'm going to wrap up the discussion and we'll move on to the motion phase. I also want to thank our councillors for the time and administration putting the budget together. It took months to do that, and the workshop was very, very intense, but it's a big part of our job. So it's our biggest document we do every year. I do appreciate everyone's efforts on that. So with that, Madam Clerk, could you put the motions on the screen? Oh, thank you very much. And council, there's 4 motions in front of us, starting with operating, then municipal capital, then municipal operating, our utility and utility capital. So I will ask for a motion from member of council on the first 6.1. Is there a member of council willing to move the operating budget? I'll move it myself then. I move that the 2024 municipal operating budget, including a general municipal tax levy of 28,308,300, 6.45% property tax increase, revenue requirements for requisitions at 8,951,100, and non-tax revenue at 20,892,300, with a total revenue matching expenses at 58,151,600 to be adopted. At this time, I'll take any questions from council on the motion. Seeing no questions. Gentlemen, remotely, any questions?
No, thank you.
No.
Thank you. All right, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you, which is the operating budget. Councilor Markov Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Thomas, how do you vote?
In favor as well.
Thank you. Council, that carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. Is there a member of council willing to move the second motion, which is municipal capital budget? Councilor Van Newkirk. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the 2024 municipal capital budget with revenues matching expenses at 13,775,000 be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion from members of council? Sam or Nathan, any comments?
Nope.
Thank you. Seeing none. Council, would you please vote on the capital budget? Councilor Markov Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Metellibus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, council. That carries unanimously, 7-0. Our next motion, a member of council willing to move the utility operating budget. I'll move that the 2024 utility capital budget, utility operating budget with revenues matching expenses at 13,443,800 be adopted. Members of council, discussion on the motion for the utility operating budget. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on this motion. Councilor Markov Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, council. Members, that council also carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. Last motion on the budget for 2024 is utility capital budget. Member of council willing to move the motion on utility capital. Councilor Penrod.
I move that the 2024 utility capital budget with revenues matching expenses at 2,631,000 be adopted.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion. Sam or Nathan? Seeing none. Okay, council, I'll ask you to vote on the utility capital budget, please. Councilor Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Council also carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. We have approved the 2024 budget and all four facets of that budget. Thank you very much for your work. Looking forward to, in April, the budget update where we do the final budget bylaw going forward into 2024. At this point, moving on to our next item on our agenda is item 6.2, section 546, request council review. Madam Clerk, do you wish to address this agenda item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So, Mr. Mayor, in this situation, we have a number of parties involved in this review process. They have been negotiating an agreement and have reached a written agreement. Because there is a written agreement in place, the parties are jointly requesting that council postpone the matter until March of 2024. The reason for the postponement is to allow the agreement to actually be executed. So we don't want to not have the hearing. We just want to postpone it to allow the agreement to take effect. And if the agreement is successful, then the orders that the city issues would have been complied with and the appeals would likely be withdrawn. So at this point, we are requesting a postponement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we require a motion to postpone? I'm assuming we do.
We do, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just put that up on the screen for council's consideration.
Thank you very much. Is a member of council willing to move the motion before us for ask for discussion? Councilor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
I move that item 6.2, section 546 requests council review be postponed to March of 2024.
Thank you, council. Discussion on the motion, members of council. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you to move the agenda item to March of 2024. Councilor Markov Swain, how do you vote? Thank you. Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, council, 7-0. All right, moving right along on our agenda. Next on our item is 6.3, initiating Habitat for Humanity projects in Beaumont. I guess we have members of administration. Oh, Mr. Schwartz, do you wish to make a comment before I move forward?
I would. Thank you very much, Mayor, and the rest of council and the members of the public. This is the first time that Katrina has been in front of you, so I want to introduce you to Katrina Tarnowski. She's a long-range planner. She's been with us for almost a year, very good at what she does. And we thought we'd start her off slow by giving her something very simple like affordable housing presentation. So there you are. Welcome, Katrina.
Welcome, Katrina. And the microphone, please pull it lights close to you. So maybe hear a little better that way if you could. That'd be great. Please begin when you're ready. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Daniluk and members of council. As mentioned, my name is Katrina Tarnowski and I'm a long-range planner with the Planning and Development Department. I'm joined this evening by Joanna Swong, Manager of Long-Range Planning. This evening, I'm here to present on initiating Habitat for Humanity projects in Beaumont. This is in response to a council motion from May 23rd, 2023, that administration provide a report on options for partnering with Habitat for Humanity to create additional affordable housing in Beaumont. First, as a bit of background, Beaumont has an affordable housing strategy adopted in 2021 after completing a housing needs assessment and is meant to take us through to 2028. The strategy identified 4 strategic directions for the city to follow. Number 1, support investment in local affordable housing through municipal policies, processes, and tools. 2, develop partnerships and capacity among organizations with a role in housing provision in Beaumont. 3, increase community support for affordable housing initiatives by fostering a greater understanding of housing needs, issues, and concerns amongst all stakeholders. And 4, advocate to senior levels of government for initiatives that help meet local housing needs. Working with organizations such as Habitat for Humanity or with our regional housing management body, the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, falls under the 2nd direction. The strategy also identified the highest needs in the community were for the following types of housing: market affordable rental housing, especially 1-bedroom units; non-market housing, especially 1-bedroom units again; access to local emergency shelter and transitional housing options; and affordable and accessible supportive housing options. Following council's motion, administration met with Habitat to discuss their interest in partnering with Beaumont to deliver affordable housing in the community. Habitat specifically focuses on delivering affordable home ownership units, which, if you picture housing affordability along a continuum, falls between affordable rental housing and market home ownership. Their recent projects in the region have delivered between 2 to 6 new homes at a time. The way a development partnership with them typically works is that a municipality will make parcels that are districted for low or medium density residential uses available to Habitat at nominal or no cost. Municipalities can achieve this in 3 ways: by transferring city-owned parcels to Habitat, by acquiring privately owned parcels to then transfer to Habitat, or by providing grant funding to Habitat so that they may purchase parcels directly. When municipalities contribute land or funding to affordable housing projects, this aids in unlocking additional funding from higher orders of government to further support development. A second component that makes Habitat development partnerships more feasible is working with developers who are able to provide parcels for substantially reduced costs. So a recent Habitat build in the city of Leduc also saw a developer bring in their building arm who were able to offer discounted construction prices too. Administration would need to enter into dialogue with the local development community to identify interested developers and appropriate parcels that can be allocated towards Habitat projects in Beaumont's developing neighborhoods. In our research, we found that timelines for partnership projects with Habitat could vary based on several factors, including phasing and availability of subdivided lots, construction schedules, and negotiations and legal review of the conditions of land transfer. However, 1 to 2 years was seen in recent projects in the Edmonton region. In reviewing the opportunities to work with Habitat to deliver affordable housing in Beaumont, administration has a few key considerations for council. The first is how we identify priority locations for non-market housing in the city. The long-range planning team and administration is working on launching a housing site selector tool in Q2 of 2024. This federally funded project will allow administration to use selection criteria such as proximity to services and amenities, access to different modes of transportation, equity need, and development feasibility to identify parcels across Beaumont that may be appropriate for affordable housing projects. This data should be an important input in decision-making for affordable housing. The second key consideration is that at this point in time, the city has not adopted a proactive approach or policy that allows administration and council to strategically assess competing requests for land and/or funding for affordable housing development. Not only Habitat, but also other housing providers have expressed interest in partnering with the city on projects, including the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, or LRHF. As mentioned earlier, the identified housing need in Beaumont is for rental and non-market one-bedroom units. The LRHF is better positioned to address this need through their work, but no mechanism currently exists to prioritize their expressions of interest. To enable decision-making for our investments that is predictable, equitable, and priority-driven, administration is undertaking analysis on two specific actions. The first is exploring opportunities to incentivize non-market housing development, including options for funding, reduction of costs for developers, and reduction of regulatory red tape. Incentives could be tied to our priorities, and supports would go to organizations that could make the biggest impact towards our goals. And the second action is recognizing affordable housing as an objective within the city's land management strategy. This may allow the city to more easily leverage its land assets to support affordable housing opportunities amongst various competing corporate priorities. At this point, administration is maintaining open pathways of communication with Habitat and the for-profit and not-for-profit development community in Beaumont to identify potential partnership opportunities. And we will continue to engage in research and analysis to improve the city's approach to investing in affordable housing. That concludes my presentation, and I welcome any questions council may have.
Thank you very much. You did very well for your first presentation to council. See, we're pretty nice people up here. Now come the questions now. This is where it gets more difficult. So that's the setup, and here's the setup. Okay. With that, I'll open up members of council for questions for our presenters on the material this evening, which we'll receive for information later on as part of the motion process. Councilman Cook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Housing affordability. Great job on the presentation, by the way. Sorry. And welcome after a year. Housing affordability is becoming an increasing concern, even in our predominantly affluent Beaumont. Therefore, I believe the sooner we have these conversations, the better. I also think that getting the housing selector tool in place will definitely be an important first step. Just a few kind of clarifying questions, I guess. If a municipality is able to donate land, like in Leduc's example, who's predominantly responsible for getting the local developer to jump on board? Can you clarify? I know you kind of spoke to Habitat a little bit, that they work with developers. Is it mainly their responsibility, or?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook. I think it works differently in different municipalities, depending on who has established relationships. I think the municipality, the city has relationships with developers existing. I think it would likely be easier to continue working through those existing pathways within the context of Beaumont.
Okay, thank you. So with that, have we, or do we know any of the potential entities who have shown interest in and who can deliver on affordable housing? Have they started any conversations with any developers in our area to see if any are interested?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook. There have been very preliminary discussions with a few of our developers in newer neighborhoods. I think because we don't necessarily yet have direction as to what council would like to see take place with which housing providers, the discussions have just been at that very initial stage of, what have these developers done in other similar communities and whether they'd be open to the idea. But the discussion hasn't really proceeded into specifics of parcels or costs or anything like that as of yet.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more questions.
Please proceed.
You noted that we have competing requests from various places to build affordable housing. Are they actually competing to build, or is it kind of would be nice if? I know our partner, Leduc Regional Housing, is certainly kind of who we would naturally turn to get some of this done. But I think the big thing is all of this is dependent on funding, and if they're able to get access to it. So even if they receive land, and potentially Councillor Barnhart could clarify this too, could they get the funding that is required? And would that? I don't know. Can you answer?
Councilor Barnhart, do you want to make a comment on that?
Thank you. I'm going to answer it in a roundabout kind of way.
Mhm.
I do have a motion to put forward
Okay.
regarding where to go with that. But I think it would be important right here to clarify the different kinds of affordable housing we're
Mhm.
talking about.
Mhm.
I'm cutting in on your time. Did you want to keep going down another road, or can I ask the administration if they would just clarify that for us? The difference between the
Sure.
Habitat for Humanity and affordable housing that
Sure.
Leduc Regional, like
Yep.
they're really different things, and
Mhm.
I think we need to clarify that
Mhm.
piece.
Yep.
Thank
Okay,
you.
do you wish to
Uh,
weigh it in?
Yeah, through
Please
the
do.
mayor to Councillor McCook. So Habitat for Humanity specifically deals with a segment of the housing market that's affordable home ownership, whereas the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation is more focused on that affordable rental or social housing segment. So they're different areas. They're not really competing, other than there are limited dollars and pieces of land that a city can allocate to housing bodies in general.
Okay, thank you. I think for me, just mostly kind of closing comments. I think the suggestions given, such as exploring opportunities to incentivize non-market housing development and recognizing affordable housing as an objective within the city's land management strategy, are really great and clearly needed. However, I did see some things like over the next several years, and I just worry that this will be more of a long push. When I believe we can look at some of these options a little sooner. I think especially once we get that housing selector tool, I think if we look at it realistically, we don't have a ton of options to deliver on some of these things. We're limited as to what we can. So I think some of that pre-work is probably already done. And I think we need to go beyond kind of keeping communication pathways open and get into some real kind of down to business discussions regarding this. As you said, the difference between Habitat and what Leduc Regional Housing offers, we kind of need to make some decisions as to where we kind of lean, and I think who can deliver on some of this stuff, so we start having some of this in our community. So I look forward to the land management strategy and looking at options sooner rather than later, so we can move this conversation forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Steve, you're good? You had your button on. All right, we'll go to the left side of the room today. Kathy?
Thank you very
You have the
much.
floor.
They do know that this is a topic that I'm very excited to see coming forward and moving ahead. And I know it's a long road, but we've made some progress in the last couple of years. And I think Beaumont is now in a place where we need to be planning for the future and for the single bedrooms and the deeper subsidy that comes with some of the housing that Leduc Regional Housing provides currently. What I was hoping to do, and I have a motion that I would like to put forward, not in any way to get between Habitat Humanity and other developers, because we need all of it. We don't need just one option. We need a housing continuum. But what I'm aware of as a possibility that Leduc Regional Housing, I know the administration has talked to them as well, about using land that we currently have buildings on. We have the Manoir, which is seniors self-contained housing, just one example, where there could be a renovation that could actually provide more housing and more single rooms. But of course, we need planning dollars, we need support dollars, and we need operating costs. So all of that would have to be looked at, and anything the city can do to help Leduc Regional Housing would be very much appreciated. So that's why this motion would come back with potential options. And again, if there are other developers who can do it and can do it the same or better, than the Duke Regional Housing, then that's certainly okay with us. We want to see more housing in Beaumont that's affordable. But we are looking at the affordable housing that is for like 30% below market, that type of housing is what we're looking at. So I don't know that I have any more questions for you, as much as Mayor, when you're ready, I would put forward this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd probably go to the member council, any more clarifying questions first, and I'll come back to you for your
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you.
I mean, we can deal with that. So any further questions or observations for our presenters on the information this evening? Steve?
Mayor,
Oh, Nathan, 1 second. We'll see the community. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few of the standout points for me. I don't really want to repeat all the stuff that Councillor McCook said, but I really did catch on to the next several years piece of that. And I wasn't sure how I would bring that up, and Councillor McCook already put forward that. But one of the things that perplexes me, and I can't really see a path to success here with this topic, because we have, you know, competing interests, but competing is a bad word. Maybe multiple interests in ways this could happen. There are, they all face the same upfront issue, which is the land piece. And some would be publicly funded, some would be, you know, invested from private individuals, and some could be using CMHC financing options that are advantageous to affordable housing. You know, like there's a whole bunch of paths here, and I don't know which one gets Beaumont the best bang for its buck. And, you know, and that's the part that leaves me perplexed with all this. So, you know, I'm appreciative of the motion that's going to come forward, because that's going to examine that piece. But what I don't know is what other developers might have in mind, or what other options might exist here, there, and in other places. So, you know, thank you for Councillor McCook for bringing this piece forward, because it just made me think more broadly about the topic. And just my last concluding statement is very similar to the points made already around affordable housing, is that it isn't just one bubble. It's affordable housing isn't just a thing. It's a whole bunch of needs from various groups of people in the community. So it isn't about the house, it's about the individual. And so it's affordable options for individuals. And I think that is the lens that I'm thinking about it now through as I ponder this issue some more. So just some statements tonight, Mayor. I really need to collect my thoughts on this to understand how best Beaumont can participate in opening up opportunities for individuals. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to wrap my head around that, but that's just where I'm at tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good comments. I appreciate that. Nathan? Councillor Phillips, you have the floor.
perfect. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Obviously, I think everyone can confirm that, you know, affordability is important, and having housing options is critical. One of the things, and I'll use my I guess new council door knocking experience just to run through a concern that I slightly have, is just engaging current communities or residents if this is going to be going in an existing community or near it. One of the things that I got from, again, from knocking on doors, talking to individuals, is that they don't always necessarily feel that they're being heard. So I guess my question to administration is, will we consult with existing residents before we put a major or significant project forward?
Through the mayor to Councillor Tanabas. I think for the individual projects, we will definitely have some community engagement with regarding to the potential projects. Yep. There will be future engagements. And also probably as background, when we did the affordable housing strategy, the administration undertook an extensive community engagement to talk to not only the developers, stakeholders, but also the public, and also some people that are in the lived experience, that are people that are living in affordable housing. So we understand what the needs are to come up with the strategies. Yeah. So.
Thank you. And then, Nathan, anything else? You're good, Nathan?
Just to clarify, I think I got most of the answer there, but I just want to make sure that again, that we're not just asking them their thoughts and potentially not taking into account some of the concerns they may have or the support that they have for the project as well. I just want to make sure that our residents are heard prior to us again introducing a significant change into an existing neighborhood. And potentially that's not even the case here. Maybe we're looking at undeveloped areas. Which would be a different story, but I just want to make sure that the consultation piece is there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I move on to Councillor Barnard and your motion, again, thanks for your presentation. Very informative information. Much appreciated. Affordable housing has gotten kind of a very convoluted term. I had a resident refer to zero lot line houses being affordable housing. When you're spending $350,000 or $400,000 on a house, I wouldn't call it affordable housing. It's a zero lot line house. So that's it. The term has gotten so convoluted over time. It's really hard to figure out what exactly is affordable housing, what is subsidized housing, and so on. So it's a very, very muddy area right now. And thank you for trying to help us understand and get through it. And to Councillor Van Nuker's point, how to get to the end result. I'm looking forward to a subsequent report coming in the future. In the meantime, Councillor Barnard, you have a motion to make, I believe.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll make the motion, and then if I could just speak to it briefly.
Absolutely. You speak first. Yes.
So I move that by the end of the second quarter of 2024, administration prepare a report, including potential options, costs, and considerations for establishing an affordable housing facility in Beaumont, similar to the Gates Landing, that's spelled incorrectly, GAETZ Landing Housing Complex in the city of Leduc. And just to speak to it, if I may, Mayor, I'd like to clarify why it says affordable housing facility similar to. That's to my earlier comments about it's not zero lot lines we're talking about. It's definitely deep subsidy, that particular complex that we're referring to here, and would help to address the needs of the individuals who have difficult situations that they're dealing with. The hope is that some facility like that would be available in Beaumont. It may or it may not be Leduc Regional Housing that puts things together in time to make something like that. But I just wanted to mention that Leduc Regional Housing is made up of 7 municipalities. And for that Gates Landing facility, that was a collaboration of 7 municipalities in the county of Leduc that contributed to the cost of that, including Beaumont. And so the idea of this facility is to make it regional. And if it goes again, wherever it may go, I totally agree that housing is not just meant to be the house. It's a noun and it's a verb. Housing has management responsibilities that go along with it. And that's one of the things that management bodies do. They manage the facility, but they also help the people find the facility, and they promote it and they look after it, and all of that comes with. That's not always the case in some developments for affordable housing, so I'll just leave it at that. But yes, that's my motion, Mayor, and I look forward to hearing more about what options the city has available to help make that happen.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Members of council, please. Councillor Van Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks to Councillor Barnhart for bringing this motion forward. As part of this motion, were you thinking that we would get back what land is available to do this with? Because that would be one of the considerations, I would say. And if so, I'm just wondering if we don't need to just put that type of a thing in brackets, just to be specific, because it's one thing to have potential options, costs, and considerations, but one of the key considerations is the land available to do it in Beaumont. So I'm just wondering if we need to add a little bit to that in there. Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart, here's to.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. I assumed it would be part of what was coming back anyway, but I probably should never have assumed that. Because I know the administration in their report had said they would be bringing back information as well. So this was, again, to pursue it even further, make sure it came back with the specific information. So I'm okay with adding that in there.
I do see a suggested edit up there. Potential locations, something like that.
That would be fine.
Would that be okay to just hone in on? Thank you.
Okay, so potential locations is in there. Perfect.
Thank you.
Stephen, anything further, Stephen?
No, thank you.
No problem. Other members of council with questions on the motion? Councilor Telebas, Nathan, do you have any questions? I can't see you on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It just relates to my initial comments. So the potential locations, I just want to make sure we're consulting with existing residents. So it's something down the road, but it eventually will be tied into this process.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be well accounted for, but good to mention it again. I appreciate that. Any further comments from members of council? Stephen, round two, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor,
Go ahead,
just
go ahead.
one additional thought and a question for administration. I would look back, but I'll just ask the question directly. Does this timeline conflict with this land selector tool? Because if the reason I ask is because if we're asking for potential locations here for the end of Q2 2024, but the land selector tool is a piece of that. I'm just wondering if there's a conflict there now that I think about it.
Mr. Wong?
The land selection tool probably will be launched not publicly by the end of March. So it will be in place by the end of March, and then probably it will be launched if everything goes correctly or smoothly. It will be publicly launched by May or June.
So yeah, perfect. That seems to be no
And we will
conflict
have
then.
some communications to the public of this tool as well. So.
Okay, yeah, that's close enough. I think that'll be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions from members of council for the motion in front of us? Seeing none, at this point, Councillor Barnard, any last comments before I call for the vote? You're good? All right, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that carries unanimously, 6-0. Councilman Swain had to leave our meeting a few moments ago. He's not included in the vote process going forward this evening, just so we're clear on procedure. There's only 6 of us voting this point forward going into the rest of the evening. That carries, as I mentioned, 6-0. Thank you very much. And thank you, representatives. Much appreciated. And welcome again. Thank you. Well done. All right. Play golf clap, you know. Okay, next on our agenda is 6.4 is on consent. 6.5, parking permit program, residential areas. Mr. Melvin, would you care to join us at the front, please?
Good evening, council, members of the public, Chief Melvin, Director of Protective Services. Here to answer questions reference the parking permit program along 43rd there by Ecole to Composite High School there in Beaumont. So we dug through the files back to 2006. Can't really find anything earlier than that when it relates to the parking soon that was brought forward. A parking program was started back then with 8 homes adjacent from the high school. And that is run continuous year to year, including this year moving forward. We did receive obviously some complaints that was brought forward from the road that's to the north, which would be 44th, where students from the high school are parking there during the daytime while they attend classes. There is 2 options in the report for council to consider. We did look at the initial 8 residents that received parking passes and noted that they all have off-street parking, and that in accordance with everything that we look for, 43rd Ave is still a public roadway within our road network within the city, and we can enforce TSAs, the Traffic Safety Act, and any regulations or bylaws put forward by council. And obviously the parking is a piece that's there. So I will leave it at that, open up to council have any questions related to the report, the options, and any risk moving forward.
Thank you, Chief. Director Melvin, appreciate that. Councilor Cook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just had a couple clarifying questions. This is a little bit of a problem with a lot of students driving, and I think as our high school population grows, it may be may continue to be a little bit of an issue. For the potential parking lot expansion, whose responsibility is it? I know we kind of own the land where it would potentially expand to. But who would be responsible for kind of the construction of it? Like is that something we'd have to come to an understanding with the?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, there would have to be an agreement with all parties for sure. I know that there was some initial thoughts on expansion of the park, especially now with the football field in there. But there is nothing in the 2024 budget when it comes to any type of parking upgrade to that area as of yet.
Right. But would that be like our sole cost? Or would the school board share in the cost?
I'm unaware yet on the cost unless there's someone else in administration that can comment.
Ms. O'Neill.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, it's something that we're still exploring at this time with Black Gold. It could be a shared capital cost or shared operating cost for maintenance of the parking lot. It's too early and not planned for 2024 at this time, but we can definitely keep those doors open with Black Gold.
Okay. I just know that there's different information floating around in the community, and I just wanted to have a good understanding as to whose cost it would be and who's responsible for it. Another question. So it says option 2 would be $1,000. Is that potentially a typo? It says option 2 would be to cancel the parking permit program. I'm just wondering why.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, that's an option.
But it says the financial cost for that option would be $1,000, and if it continued past 2024, it'd be $1,500. So would that be for option 1?
Right. Sorry, for option 1, there would be just an additional passes that we would have to do and issue those out. For option 2, there would be a reduction in cost because we wouldn't be moving the program forward.
Right.
And hang on, Kat, if you don't mind, Ms. O'Neill, want you to jump in on that point?
Sure, only because I see Director Melvin doesn't have the report in front of him. So I just want to confirm for council that there is a typo in there and the financial analysis section should say option 1.
Option 1.
Thank
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Option what, sorry? Option
Option
1.
1.
That's what I thought. Okay, good.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good stick handling, Jay. Kat, continue, please.
And then do we know if the residents are utilizing it? I know it says that they do have off-street parking. I'm guessing potentially this would be for them to, if they have visitors or whatnot, to be able to use that. Do we know if they're actually making use of it or?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, we have actively seen passes being hung in rearview mirrors off vehicles along that avenue, so they are being used.
Okay, thank you. I think, Mayor, I would be more leaning towards option 1. I don't know if we have to I guess include other areas potentially. I guess that's what Chief Melvin is suggesting. I think, yeah, having them have the option to have the parking permits is good. That way they still have the option to park in front of their place. But I think we still need to look at options for that, because I think the issue is only going to grow as we continue to have more students in the high schools. So, and I know it's a lot for our bylaw to constantly be there looking after it. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, followed by, Madam Clerk first, and I'll go to Councilman Newkirk. Madam Clerk?
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm, was Councillor McCook wanting to put forward a motion for option 1? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll do some more discussion. We'll come back to you, Kat, if you want. That's okay. Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councillor Penrod. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you for the presentation and the report and some potential options there. Just wanted to hone in on the data collection side of things. You know, one of the second sentence in option 1 is collect data for another year and report back to council in 2024. But I believe what we've heard in the past is the data collection that occurs right now and the way the data is collected makes it pretty easy to go back and find infractions, related to 44th Ave. Is that true? Is it a big lift to do that? If we asked in November to say, what does that look like? Is that a big job? Or is it easier to say, administration, please collect this data for the year and report back? Just
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, every call that comes into municipal enforcement is tracked in a records management system and is recorded within the backup 911 center. So the data is there. Put in the dates and check a few boxes and it populates. So it's not labor intensive to do it. We just once again we're relying on that critical piece of IT infrastructure to provide that resources so that we can bring you the data to support an opinion.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and that is exactly what I recall from question past. So for me on this issue, I think that's where I land, is just to collect the data for another year, and council want to know that or continue to hear concerns, at that point we could ask for a report that looks back, right? That's kind of where my head is at on this. I've been doing quite a few passes over there myself. I haven't seen the problem come to life in the same way, and I'm going to keep watching because if that's just what I do. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Bill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify. So we have the two options kind of towards the end of the report, but they're actually alternative options, right? So the first option in front of us is just to continue forward as is, and just simply receive this report for information. Is that correct?
That's correct. So towards information, nothing changes. Another year of gathering data, as Steve mentioned. Does that clarify your question?
Yep.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, with the passing of the budget, did we change the fine amount for parking illegally, or is there even a fine? Is it just basically a warning that they get?
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, obviously our sole issue down there is that there's not enough parking, right? And putting parking passes up doesn't fix the problem. The problem is that there's not enough parking at the high school. So we try to educate as much as possible. We have very little repeat offenders. They may park further away from the school, but there is very little, I wouldn't say infractions. We do follow up on complaints. And if warranted, we would issue them a ticket very similar to a parking during a snow removal route. I think it's an $80 something ticket. I'd have to dig up, but that's
so it's more
it's
of
yeah, we try to
warning
issue a
issue.
municipal tag first and go from there, but very seldom we get repeat offenders at that level. So
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Telebus. Nathan, do you have any questions or comments before I go on to the next speaker?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penrod, your light was on. You took it off? Okay, no problem. Okay, so we can accept the report's information, or we can have a councillor make a motion if anybody's willing to make a motion at this point. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Penrod. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would move the recommendation that the December 12th, 2023 parking permit program in residential areas report be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There's a motion on the floor now. Councillor Penrod, do you have any comments to make before I call for the motion discussion? Okay, at this point, discussion on the motion. Councillor Penrod, if you have the floor.
Sorry, Mayor. I was just going to move that same motion.
Oh, okay. No problem. I jumped the gun there on you. Put you on the spot. Okay, seeing any discussion on the motion? Nathan, do you have any discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, seeing no discussion on the motion before us, I'll ask you to vote on that motion. Councilman Telebus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that carries 6-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Director Melvin. Appreciate your attendance this evening and the report. Thank you, Councilor McCook, getting off the consent agenda. Good discussion. Thank you very much. All right, we are moving right along in our agenda here. Next, we have 6.6 motion following notice, Councillor McCook, city operated bus service for childcare. Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion on the screen when you have a moment? Councillor McCook, I'll ask you to move your motion and then speak to it, please. Kat, you have the floor.
I move that by the end of the second quarter of 2024, administration provide a report on the feasibility, cost advantages and risks of having the city invest in purchasing and operating its own bus for the primary purpose of addressing bus services required for the city's childcare program in comparison to leveraging third-party options. This is pretty straightforward. The people that use the city daycare pay quite a bit more than other daycares in the city for busing. So the reason I brought this forward is just to assure parents that we've explored all options available to us. I guess my biggest question is how can the other providers in the city buy small buses or vans and provide busing for much cheaper than we can? So I also think that the city could potentially benefit from such a vehicle and utilize it for other things. But I think we owe it to the parents to explore all options. So this is what this does.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate the explanation for the motion before us. Any other councillors wish to ask any questions of Councillor McCook on the motion before us? Councillor Natelebus, you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Just I guess a quick question, Councillor McCook, just in regards to what we're assuming or where we're assuming some of this funding would come from. My understanding is we've obviously got our childcare services or in-house childcare services, I guess, to almost a full cost recovery. Is the anticipation here that this will add additional cost, or is this fees that would be charged to existing students or attendees?
Councillor McCook?
Yeah, I think there would be the initial cost would likely be a capital cost. And then part of it would be paid for through parents. I think that's part of what this is. That's why the risks are included. So just to kind of go over, what would be involved for the city and whether the city could utilize it for other things. And if they can't, then that would obviously be part of the risk.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you for that response. Obviously, I'm in support of getting more information here, but I do want to keep in mind that we're finally hitting that cost recovery, and it's just something that I don't want to offset, but I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Any further discussion or question, members of council, before I ask you to vote on the motion? Seeing none, Councillor Cook, any last comments, or you're good to go to the vote? Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor, with that being said, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Telebus, I know you said yes, but I'll do officially. How are you voting?
In favor, please.
Thank you. Council, that also, Councillor Cook, I need your, there you are. Thanks. The bunny's been funny buttons tonight. That passes 6-0. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda is 6.7. Motion following notice, Councillor Telebus, update to C14 purchasing policy. Nathan, the motion's on the screen. Can you see it? And if you can, please make your motion and then speak to it when you're done. You have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you. I do feel, I'll put the motion forward that by the end of the first quarter of 2024, administration conduct a review of the C14 purchasing policy and provide a report on, report on possible updates and enhancements, including things such as greater clarity for definitions and more detail on various processes, such as requirements to obtain bids, when public calls are required, and the audit process to confirm compliance.
Thank you, Councillor. Please speak to your motion.
Absolutely. I do feel that this is actually a very fitting policy, and I think it's something that we should try and get in place before we have a procurement officer join the team. To be kind to our existing policy, I will say it's quite loose and could be interpreted many ways. I'm just looking for an enhancement, but a little more clarity and definition in how we approach bids, especially of significant value. So I would like it defined as many other municipalities have, where there's a dollar amount signed, assigned, the process that needs to be followed. So for example, if it's over $100,000, we would look at having a public bid or something along those lines. So
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. With that, I'll move on to Counselor Penrod, followed by Counselor Barnhart. Philip, you have the floor for questions.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I think my question is partially for Councillor Natellenbos, just to help me understand, but also partially for administration. Maybe I'll start with the order of operations piece first for administration. If I recall the job description that we funded in the budget process of a procurement specialist, it was to identify and bring someone onto the team that had some of those enhanced skills and experience, maybe to kind of take some of our procurement practices to the next level. And so I'm just wondering if actually you would rather have that person in place to do this work, or would you more agree with what Councillor Natellenbos suggested, that it might be best to have some of this stuff shined up and then the new person can come in and start executing it?
CEO Schwartz, you want to comment?
Yeah.
Provide a reply?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. I want to give a little bit of background on our policy. It's a fairly recent policy. The information that the Councillor Natellenbos is looking for is part of the procedures that we follow. So we do have thresholds, we do follow APP, and we have a tendering process. The policy that we have in place is very high level, and it was designed that way on purpose, and recommended to us by our legal counsel, so that it keeps this council out of areas of making decisions that they shouldn't be and that are not protected. So I'll go back to your question. For that reason, I don't think it would be a big impact whether one was ahead of the other, because a lot of the stuff that you're talking about right now is in place. It's just not written in the policy. And anybody can add anything more? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. Does that answer your question, Mr. Penrod?
Yep.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Schwartz, because I think I have a different question now than when I first started. But based on what you're saying, when was the policy last looked at by council?
CEO Schwartz.
I'm slowly delaying so that LLNS can give me the answer, but I believe it was done in this term. So I believe it was done 2 years ago.
I had that in my head. That's
Yeah,
why I
it
was wondering
done-
if that
well,
was.
and I'm going to refer to Sandy, was done under Sandy's guidance. So it would, or just before. Okay. So maybe it was 3 years. It's fairly recent though, because we looked at the policy, and the old policy had a lot of operational stuff in it, and legal was the one that said, no, you got to get counsel out of that or they're going to be liable. Here's what you want for a higher level policy. So that's what we came back with. It was recommended, and 2021.
So that was my thought. My recollection was that it hasn't been that long that we had looked at this.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what council is going to be able to get back from this report. My other question was going to be, do you need more time than the first quarter? And I think that ties in with what Councillor Penrod was saying, that might help to do, to take some more time with that. So, I mean, I think council should be aware of the procedures, but not, as you say, we're not the ones that should be making those procedures. So do you have a comment on that, Mr. Schwartz, in terms of the timeline?
I would. Thank you very much, because I hope I'm not giving the impression that I'm trying to convince council not to go down this road. If we go down this road, what we will do is bring in that legal counsel and be able to explain to council, likely in camera, what some of the do's and don'ts of a typical purchasing policy would include. So it'd be a great education for all of us, quite frankly.
Okay.
I'm just trying to provide the facts that it is fairly new. It was given to us. A lot of the things that Nathan's talking about, we do follow those, we do have those processes in place, but.
Okay, so
And the timeline we can make.
The timeline is okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
That sounds good. The legal department come in. That sounds like a good idea. Have legal come in and help us in a closed session, understand the pitfalls and so on. I appreciate that. Councilor Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm glad admin took a stab at that explanation, because that's exactly where I was going to go. Is I was going to talk about how we got here already. And The one question I did have for admin is that it actually does say next administration review date is May 2023. So we had put that in there on purpose to make sure that we, looked at stuff, right? So I'll throw that out and I'll loop back to that. But one of the things that I was adamant that got into this was the role of council. And in number 7 of the policy that exists right now, I'm just going to read it. It says, City Council is responsible for approving the annual municipal operating, utility operating, and capital budgets. Procurement authority is delegated from council to the Chief Administrative Officer in accordance with this policy. So I was quite adamant when we reviewed this last time that we make sure that the role of council is clear. And the important piece here is policy versus procedure. That is the determinant for me. And we got here for all the reasons that we got here through a legal process. Am I going to say, no, we shouldn't review it again? I don't think I will, because it actually states that May 2023 is the next administration review date. So what is being asked here, although I don't agree with the wording on it, because various processes are actually procedures, and there are requirements to obtain bids. There are, as the CAO said, those things all exist in an internal procedure, right? And so it's not that we don't have those things. So what I don't want to do is have the public think that, there's no gotcha here. All of this stuff exists in a procedure. What we're looking at is a policy, and the policy was set to be reviewed anyways. So I will support this motion tonight because the policy was set to be reviewed anyways, but I just want to be very clear that, there's no gotcha here, and we got to this place with this policy for all the right reasons. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with your comments totally, and I do appreciate the candor of those comments. How we got here is an important thing. Any further questions, members of council, before I go to Nathan for a final? Oh, Councillor Penrod, Phil. Round 2.
Yeah, so I don't know how possible it is to actually answer this question tonight. It might be, might require my own notice of motion or something down the road. Maybe an inquiry could do it. It seems to me that every time we make one of these motions, there is a cost to the city and therefore to the ratepayer. And I would just be curious, because I don't disagree with what Councillor Van Newkirk said. I'm never going to vote against getting good information, especially information that we're already sort of scheduled to be reviewing. That being said, this stuff isn't free, right? And so it impacts my decision and my vote a little bit to know, is this work that's required or not? And so my question really is, when we make a motion like this, what's the cost?
That's a really good question. We had that question a few times in previous years. So let's see how Schwartz take a shot at that one. CO Schwartz?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you very much. And you're right, we wouldn't have the answer. What we've been doing offhand, what we've been doing is tracking council inquiries and notices of motion. Each one is different and requires a different level of work. What we're hoping to be able to do is get better financial analysis of these types of requests so that we could know that council is making a $5,000 decision or a $20,000 decision. We don't have that analysis. I don't have that data right now.
Councillor Penrod, a follow-up on that? Or further thought?
Yeah, so a further thought, and I don't know how executable it is, but in my mind, it'd be interesting when these reports come back, if there was a price tag on them. Maybe doing it that way would allow you to assess the work that's gone into it and put a bit of a price tag on them. So we can kind of assess if.
I think we had a lot more data. We probably could do that, but CO Schwartz, you want to just jump on that one?
Yeah, just quickly, that's what we're working towards, is being able to cost that out.
Yeah, I think they gave you some assistance in the past before you joined council. We would sometimes request reports administration. They would tell us if they had capacity to do it. They had capacity. It's part of the existing budget. No capacity, have to go to outside consultant to do that report with an associated cost. That doesn't really answer your question, but we do have an idea from administration how much capacity they have as the year goes forward. And there's always a saturation point when they say any more reports, guys, it's going to cost a consultant to get it done. And that is the tipping point. Now, with getting better data financially, we can probably work towards that idea. It'd be nice to get an idea how much the report actually costs us in terms of people and the work they're doing and the time involved and so on. So I know where you're going with that. It's a valid concern and we'll address as best we can going forward. So it's on our radar for sure. Any further questions from comments from council on this? Before I go to Nathan for a final comment, if he wants to make one. Nathan, you have the floor for a final comment if you want.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. One of the things I just want to bring forward, I just find it slightly funny that we're questioning cost on a motion that's being put forward to help reduce cost. It's not a question that we ask when we are spending money or looking to spend more money. This is an attempt to objectively clarify our process so that we can reduce our cost by allowing for more competitive bidding. If this process already exists, let's further define it so that everyone's familiar with it. And we have something that we can measure our process to make sure that we're in conformance with the policy. So yes, there's obviously going to be a cost related to modifying our policy, but it's with the intent to help reduce costs down the road. So I think it's important everyone keeps that in mind. The slight cost that comes with it could result in significant savings down the road. Through budget, I know one hot topic that was discussed was the procurement of our ice rinks and the amount of money we could have saved had we had a little more thorough process for that scenario. So I just want this to be that process. And again, that we can measure ourselves in terms of our ability to comply with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Seeing no further comments. Members of council allows you to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. And that also carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you, council. With that, we go on to 7.1, but it's 7:31. I'm going to call a 10-minute recess. Be back here at 7:41, and we'll begin with 7.1, bylaw 1042-23. Land use bylaw, medical intermittent. And no one caught that I didn't say flexible or directional on the mic, eh? No one caught that. I just say it. No one caught that. We're live? All right, here we go. All right, we're back live after our short break this evening. We're going back to our agenda, which now begins with 7.1, bylaw 1042-23, land use amending bylaw, medical cannabis production, first reading. Mr. Hipkiss, I believe, are you presenting into this topic to us? Okay, I'll put your mic on. There you are. You're on.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. This evening, I'd like to introduce bylaw 1042-23, land use bylaw, medical cannabis production to be given first reading. Just a brief history. On October the 11th, 2022, council directed administration to prepare a report on options for amending the land use bylaw to provide more options for mitigating nuisance related to medical cannabis growing. Then on June the 27th, 2023, council approved the administration to proceed with taking the necessary steps to implement option 3 as set out in the June 27, 2003 report, bylaw 944-19, land use bylaw, our zoning blueprint, mitigation nuisance related to medical cannabis. Option 3 prohibits medical cannabis production in residential land use districts, but allows medical cannabis production as permitted use in other land use districts. Administration in consultation with legal counsel has prepared amendments to the land use bylaw summarized in the report before you today. The highlights to this report are the following: addition of 2 new uses, cannabis production and processing and medical cannabis production. Cannabis production and processing is a facility that produces and distributes cannabis as authorized provincially or federally. This use is intended to mean a commercial scale operation. This use is not permitted in any of the land use districts. Medical cannabis production is the growing of cannabis for medical purposes by a patient or designated person registered with Health Canada. This use is intended to mean individual production pursuant to the federal medical license. This use is only permitted in the the Agricultural Holdings District and the Business Light Industrial District. It is not permitted in any primarily residential districts or commercial districts. The use for medical cannabis production are intended to address and mitigate land use issues associated with this use. The use standards are summarized in your report. Administration recommends first reading to council and second reading and public hearing to be held in the first quarter of 2024. Mayor, councilors, again, thank you for your time this evening. And if you have any questions, I look forward to answering them.
Thank you, Ms. Hipkiss. Appreciate that. So council, as this is first reading, I haven't had first reading in quite a while actually for a bylaw. So our procedure is we at this point, especially for our newer councilors, first time doing a first reading, you are welcome to ask clarifying questions from the report. We must refrain from debating or inferring how you feel about the budget, or sorry, about the bylaw tonight. At second reading, that's when we have full ability to ask more in-depth questions, debate the bylaw and do motions, all that kind of good stuff. So tonight is more sort of for clarifying questions. Then I'll go to first reading on a motion for that purpose. So at this point, I'll open the floor to questions from council. Clarifying question from Mr. Hipkiss on the report before I go to first reading motion. Any clarifying questions from members of council? Councilor Telebus, I can't see you. Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no clarifying questions, I appreciate that. A well-written report, very, very factual, very well laid out, very easy to follow, much appreciated. So at this point, then I will entertain a motion to for first reading on this bylaw. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that bylaw 1042-23, land use bylaw amending bylaw, be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Let me try that again.
No problem.
Bylaw 1042-23, land use amending bylaw, medical cannabis production, first reading. That bylaw 1042-23, land use bylaw amending bylaw, be given first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I've read it
Appreciate
all.
that. No problem. It was a mouthful today. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing none, let's move right along to the voting of council on first reading. Councilor Telebus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. That also carries unanimously, 6-0 on first reading. Mr. Hipkiss, thank you for coming. We'll see you again in January at second reading going forward. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is, let's clear that one. 7.2 was on consent. We go to number 8, councilor inquiries, responses, and reports. Are there any councilor inquiries, responses, or reports this evening? Councilor Penrod, Phil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I think I just go right into reading it. Is that correct?
Yes, please, go right ahead.
Okay. So please provide information on past efforts to develop a permanent year-round outdoor cenotaph in Beaumont, including challenges and considerations that have prevented such development from proceeding in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. A good topic we've discussed before, but it's good to have a recap on it and go from that point forward. I appreciate the inquiry. Thank you. Any further inquiries from members of council? Councilman Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't send this in, but I just wondered about feedback from events and how we may get feedback from some of the events. We just had a great Brighton Up Beaumont event. I wasn't able to attend due to attending child sports for hours and hours this weekend, and that happens. But just a general inquiry on how we intend on collecting event-specific feedback, and if we are able to, solicit feedback from the community in a timely manner following each event. I just thought it might be prudent. We haven't directly asked that before, but I know we, in a non-direct way, collect feedback all the time, but I don't know that we've said, hey, how did you like Brighton Up Beaumont? What did you like? What didn't you like? How can we improve? So anyhow, that thought just came to mind. for ledge services. Sorry, I didn't pre-populate anything for that, so.
Do you want to maybe have, Joe Lipser maybe help you draft something? We'll come back to you
That
later on in the
looks,
meeting.
what is collected up there is very good, yeah. Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk, you are on your game today.
Thank you.
Does that suit you, Stephen?
Yeah, that's great, thank
Do you
you.
want to read it into the record then, please?
I can, please.
Thank you.
Please provide information on how does the city collect event-specific feedback and whether we are able to get feedback after an event in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further counselor inquiries? Or response to the reports? Seeing none, thank you. Moving on to our budget, in our agenda. CEO update, Mr. Schwartz. I do actually. There you
Yes,
go.
thank you very
Microphone's
much.
on.
We'll bring it up on the screen here as we usually do. As we enter the holiday season, we're going to have some restricted hours. So on December 14th, the city hall will be closed at 11 a.m. We have our annual staff general meeting and appreciation for the year. So we've made a decision this year to close it off at 11 a.m. We find things are pretty quiet right now. City Hall will also be closed the 25th, 26th, and 27th, and the January 1st, and that's typical. And we send out notices and put signs on the door, and has not been a problem in the past. If there's any non-emergency concerns or service requests, you can put them on our service portal, as that's online 24 hours a day, as you know. Recreation, the BSRC Fitness Center is about to open. It should open on Wednesday. It was closed because the floor failed. So the entire floor in the fitness facility had to be replaced. The soft flooring on top, it was covered by warranty. So the staff were able to catch it on time, but what a job moving every piece of equipment out of there, putting in new flooring, and now they're putting it all back in. Community and social development, as of today, the Beaumont Nisku Christmas Elves has received requests for 98 hampers. That's extremely high, and obviously council's talked about this and a sign of the times. We've also received 55 new resident registrations for the welcome packages since August. So that's been a very successful program, and I know Councilor Barnhart, that's something that was near and dear to your heart, and it seems to be very popular. Public engagement for ELAN wrapped up. There's 21 people attended November 16th, and we had 121 complete the online survey. So we'll be summarizing the feedback, and will be released in the beginning of January 2024. This planning and development continues to receive a high volume of residential and commercial permits this year, and it's crazy how busy it is. Now, November things typically slow down, but as you can see, they're up by 150% for residential permits. Monthly and yearly permit numbers are published on our website, and I think 2022 was a record year for us, and now 2023 is a record year for us, and we're expecting 2024 to be a record year for us. So very, very busy. Economic development, the Shop Local campaign continues. It's on our social media channels. It began November 25th, and we're trying to promote people to do their Christmas shopping locally. Centerville Park is on track to open to the public mid-December. So what you'll see going up very shortly is the shade sale structures. They'll be installed, weather dependent, obviously. Once they've been installed, the fencing from the park will be removed. The stands for the structures will have lights on them, so they will be lit, and those can be changed color, if I recall. So we'll see the sails put on and then taken down. Obviously, they don't have a snow load, but they get everything set up. And then come the spring, the shade sails will be put back up. We plan to provide comprehensive updates through our official social media channels and on the website, and it's looking really good down there, especially when there's no snow to cover it up. That's so nice. And that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thanks, CEO Schwartz. Any questions for our CEO's report? Seeing none, hard copy will be following as usually does by email for our file. So thank you very much. Next on our agenda is notices of motion. Are there any notice of motion this evening from members of council to bring forward this evening? I'm not aware of any being brought forward, so I think that that part of our agenda is no longer. Nathan, anything from you on notice of motion? I don't think so.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is our closed session, which is not happening. We was on consent agenda. Bring us to the last closing remarks then, before I adjourn this evening. So here we are on December 13th, or it's 12th today. Year's gone by very quickly. Budget flew by. as it did. The entire year's gone by very quickly. So I want to thank council for the work this past year, administration, especially for your work this past year. Every year it gets busier and we have more on our plate, as permits will allude to. Our permits are going crazy again this year. So the park's looking great. This past week, my golf committee donated $1,000 to the Beaumont Elves Christmas program. They're a little short this year on donations. We finally managed to find a little bit of money, give them some extra little cash, which they were very appreciative of, I'm sure. I know the food bank got a nice donation from the golf tournament this past September, so that's a good thing. We're doing great work in the community. So at this point, I want to adjourn the meeting. I want to thank everybody for this past year, and I want to wish everybody a very safe and very Merry Christmas season. Our next meeting is not till January 9th, I believe, the second Tuesday in January. So with that, enjoy your holiday season and spend time with your family and your friends and have some Christmas cheer. And with that, we're adjourned. Have a good evening.